Okay, here we are. I'm just roughing down a glued up blank that I did. So basically, I glued up 3 pieces of board with a contrasting piece in the center to kind of make a nice little blank here. And the reason I went ahead and did it is I didn't really have stock big enough, so I figured, well, as long as I was gluing up, I'd draw some attention to it. And you can see there the contrasted piece in the middle, which I think is olive wood. And so I'm roughing this down. It's going to be a nice little jewelry box that I'm going to be making for my nieces. I did a bunch of them for Christmas, and so this one here actually turned out to be Madison's. So this is Madison's jewelry box. And I'm just roughing out the stock, and it's nice and round there. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a little tenning here because I want to chuck this into my chuck. I want it nice and stable for turning. And so I'm just going to make a tenning here. This is really my second attempt at making a box. I made a box before and it kind of came out not very well. Well, it came out perfectly fine. It came out of the chuck that I was using, and it hit me in the head. It's a good thing I had my face shield on. So I gave up on the box and was a little scared to do any. And so I decided to do a smaller one. So this is just going to be a little box. My wife does beading jewelry and stuff, and she crochets. And so she beaded and crocheted 2 sets of earrings that we put inside these boxes for our nieces. And so what I'm doing is just kind of truing this up here a little bit. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to start dish out what's going to be the inside of the lid. Just a little bit, let's go in and I'm going to put a nice curve in here. And I didn't want to do too much. And so if you look, I'm taking very small bites. I sped this up here about 4 times. But those small bites are really what's going to allow me not to throw this out of the chuck. So it was a big deal to kind of just take it slow. I didn't want to get smacked in the head again. Now when I'm spinning, I always wear my face shield. The only time I really take it off is when I'm doing some finishing and stuff, because I'm at slower speeds and I'm not, cutting with the wood. So I'm squaring up the shoulder here, which is going to be how the lid sits on. And so I'm basically just kind of going in here, creating a nice crisp shoulder that will be, what holds the lid onto the box tightly. So now that I got that all cut out, and that's really just it. It's going to be a shallow lid, nothing too big. I'm just going to take a couple cleanup passes here and just kind of feather thing out so I don't have to do a whole lot of sanding. Less sanding I can do, the better. Now when I'm starting, if I get a little bumps or ridges, I do tend to sand them out because I'm learning how to make those nice cuts. But once you can get these nice cuts down a little bit and less sanding, it's something you want to strive for. Just marking here, this is where I'm going to part off the lid. I just take my parting tool, and I go ahead and part it off here. I just want to make sure that I don't, turn the lid into a funnel by being too close and cutting through. So I check, and then I make sure we're okay, and I continue to go. I'm just going to part it off. The original box that I did was probably about twice as long as this, and I didn't have the chuck I had when I tried it. I had which is more like a machinist 3-jaw chuck than a woodworking chuck. It's what they told me to get when I was at Grizzly. It's not a bad chuck. It's a 3-jaw chuck. I kept it, but it's not as nice as this chuck I have here. Just going to feather a little of this before I completely go ahead and remove this. So I'm going to sand. I worked my way through all the grits. I think I only went up to 600. No, I think maybe I did go all the way to 800. And I'm using some of that hot polish that comes in a little bottle. And I think it's hot. That friction polish. Put it on. I did a couple coats. And I'm just finishing the inside because I'm not going to be able to spin the inside once I cut it off. I'm going to just cut it off with this little Dazuki I have. If you look down in the bottom of the frame, I lay down a piece of plywood always on top of my ways to protect them. If the saw goes down, and it does here, boom, it hits that wood and it's not going to scratch up my ways, which you want to keep as clean and nice as possible. So flip the lid over and it sits there, and we're going to go cut the recess to hold the lid on. So I basically, just do a little and try and see where we stand, right? So not quite there yet. I'm going to cut a little more off, and I'm cutting just a small little groove in case I mess up. And if you actually look, I did mess up. What happens at some point, forgive my hairy arm. If you can see here, I went too far, and it's too loose, just way too loose. So I'm just going to cut another little groove next to it and try again. If you see, I didn't go all the way down as far, and I'm just going to keep trying until I can get it to fit. Just take a little bit off, try it, take a little off, try it. Because you can get it real nice, but if you overshoot it, then you overshot it. You're just, you got to start over again. So it's just better to take a little bit, try, take a little bit, try, and keep up with that. It seems to work the best for me. Maybe when I get better at judging it, I can take a bunch off and then try. But I'm just going to clean it up. I'm going to get rid of the stuff that we didn't use and clean that shoulder up nice. Give it another try. Right. And it's just there. It's just as tight. The problem is the little nub in the center from where I saw cut off has to be taken because it's not clearing the bottom of the lid. The lid's too shallow. So I'm just going to remove it roughly. It's not really all that important because I'm going to be hollowing this center section out. So there we go, and it fits on there nice and tightly. So now that it's on there pretty tight, I can come up and now do a final cleanup on this top. And I kind of like the squareness of the lid here. I want to round it slightly, but I didn't want anything too drastic. I wanted the top to kind of be a slight dome, and just kind of a nice little fit to this lid. So, and if you look, like the shavings coming off there are very fine because I'm not gouging material here because that lid is just sitting on there with a friction fit. So I really need to just take it off with a friction fit. I can't go ahead and do all that. It has to be done very carefully, or you just pop it right off. I'm just kind of feathering a little bit, lightly taking passes. Because one catch here, it's done. Start over. So I did these up for Christmas, and I think I did 5 or 6 of them. But it was really my first successful box. I'm just slightly round the corner here. Make it kind of nice. Looking at the video, I did like that nice sharp, crisp corner, but it looks good rounded too. I'm going to just true up the side with the lid, and I'm going to start tapering in the bottom. I wanted to kind of have just a little taper coming here, kind of give it some shape. I'll just speed the footage up here so we can go through it and basically get through it at a quicker pace. And I'm taking a little more, and I can be a little more aggressive on the sides here because it's really held in the chuck. It's not just a friction fit, but you know, still taking my time because I'm not really, you know, I'm kind of new at this. It's my first really little box. So I take my diamond parting tool, just go in and give it a little kiss right there at the joint line to kind of mask any imperfections in the joint line and just kind of show you where it should separate. And I'm just going to start working my way down here and parting it. One of the things I want to make and haven't done yet is a nice thin parting tool that can be used to take off the bottoms and stuff, because my normal parting tool is a little thick. And a nice shop-made parting tool will work fine. So I go ahead, sand throughout the grits. Just basically start at the top, being careful, trying to put pressure towards the chuck to keep that from popping off. And then when I get around the corners, just kind of, always try to push towards the chuck so I don't really pop that off. Same friction polish we put on the inside, of course. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the outside. Now, as I'm applying the finish here, I realized I didn't do a great job with my final cuts on the lid. And you can see some, like the, right in the lid. It's just, there's all those things. So right at this point, my hands are very rough and I have lots of cuts. And that polish really hurts in the cuts. Pretty bad. I wish I have nitrile gloves, and I really should have been wearing them, and I'm not here, and I paid for it. So, as you can see there, I'm not too happy with that. So, I can go right back, and that's what I do, and I cut a new surface on the top of that, and just kind of clean it up a little bit. I try to rub it in and to make it go away, but nothing's going to make that go away. It's an imperfection in the wood. The finish is actually going to draw it out and show you much more of, it's just not good. The only way to get it out is either go back to sanding, or in this case, I should just go back and take some nice, clean passes of the lid and get rid of those ridges. So, adjust the fence properly and go for it. It'd be quicker for me to go ahead, recut it, and resand it than it would be just to try to either get it out by sanding alone. The only other option is leaving it, which, it doesn't really look good. So I'd never be totally happy with it. And every time I'd see it, I'd be like, ugh, I just should have went and taken a couple more passes. And so that's what I do. And that's really all I needed to kind of clean it up. So sanding it again, and then I'll go ahead and put the finish back on the lid. I worked up again all the way to 600. Now what I'm doing here is I'm sanding back and forth with the grain. It hides any of the scratches put in from going across the grain is what happens when you're spinning the wood. So they can be very noticeable. That's why when you're sanding a board or whatever, you don't go across the grain, because you can really see those scratches much more pronounced and they're harder to get out. So what I've been doing is between every grit I stop and sand with the grain to kind of minimize that for the next go around. And every coat or every grit stop, sand with the grain, and it just makes a much nicer finish. And so right here I'm just pretty much concentrating on the lid part, because we have more turning on the base. We have to hollow the base out. So I didn't bother going ahead and finishing all the way down. Right here I'm taking a drill bit and I'm marking for the depth I want to go. Putting a slight divot here in the center, and that I find it's easier. It keeps the drill bit from wandering. It's center, you can push it in. This is another shop-made tool I want to make, is I want to make a nice, bit with drill bit with a handle that you can go ahead and push in. I also could have chucked this up in my Jacob's chuck and put it in my tails vise, but I'm just a depth hole. It's not anything real critical. It's just to help me turn this, and I find it's easier to turn with that center hole drilled out. And I'm a little more aggressive here because I'm tightly in the chuck, but I'm not super aggressive here. Because I know one catch and I'm throwing this thing again. So I'm just going to, kind of go at it, take my time. I can be a little more aggressive than I could on the lid because it's, you know, it's held in the chuck. But I'm not going crazy with hollowing out. I'm really kind of just working my way all the way down, and drilling out that center really did help. It really helped me get in there and you know, not worry about the center part as much. I'm finding that kind of works for me. I can turn with it. I'm also finding I tend to go for these carbide tools a lot because they're a little easier to learn. You can kind of jump in and get a lot done right away. I do like the bowl gouge and stuff, but I'm finding when I have to turn something quickly, like I did these projects, I just really, you know, kind of, I grab for them. These are the set from Rockler. You can get them all different places. I think I'm going to buy some bigger carbide tools from Eddie Caslin at eddiecaslin.net. He sells cutters and tools. I got my sharpening rig from him I really like. So you can go over and check his stuff out. And it's just a wood turner making stuff for wood turners. It's not a corporation. It's not a huge business. He's just, you know, he's a turner, so he knows what works and he knows what he likes. And I kind of like that aspect. And his prices can't be beat. So I'm just working basically to depth. I don't think, you can't tell from this angle, but I can still see the hole that I drilled. And so I'm just kind of working down until that hole's no longer. Which also helps me set the depth. Because I can mark the depth on the drill bit, drill in. Once that hole is gone, I've known I reached to the depth I want to go. It's not really a lot of feeling and guesswork. It's a good way to kind of get the feel there. Now I'm starting to notice that I'm getting deeper. I am getting a little more chatter. And I am getting, you know, just right there. You can see it's a little more grabby, but I don't really have a whole lot of support that I can use for this small box. So it's really, I just kind of have to stick it down there and hold tight. But what also helped is further down I got, I no longer took big cuts to risk going ahead and you know, catching it. So basically this is pretty much it. I just went ahead and finished it. Put the finish on like I did the top. The final clip kind of died, so I didn't really get the final thing. So the video stops here, but here's some stills you could take a look at. You know, pictures of the project as they're done, some of the other boxes, so enjoy. And until next time, thanks for coming to my shop.